The next component is relationships. Relationship is used to capture the rules between two entities. For example, if we consider two entities as employee and department, as shown in the picture, the relationship can be something like an employee works in a department, or a department may have many employees. So this tells us that what are the rules of connection between employee and department. In other words, how employee and department are related. Relationship tells us how data in one entity is related to the data in another entity. Relationship can also be named with a verb. So in this case, as you see, we can have the name as works, so which means an employee works in a department. There are different types of relationships. We have structural or cardinality, we have referential integrity, and then we got recursion and subtype. We will talk about these in the subsequent slides. The first one is structural relationship. This basically defines the quantity of each instance of the element that can participate in a relationship with the element of another entity, which means how many times one row of data in one entity can be related to one row of data in another entity. For example, if we consider the same two entities, as you see in the picture, employee and department, then we can say that each employee can belong to one and only one department, and one department can have zero or many employees. So what we have done here is that we have defined the structural relationship, or in other words, we have defined the cardinality between the two entities. When we say an employee belongs to one department and a department can have zero or many employees, then we are effectively talking about the cardinality of the relationship. And the domain values for the cardinality, as we see in this example, can be 0, 1, or many. Now again, if we look at this example that I have, I've used what is called crow's feet notation to depict the relationship. It is one of the many choices that we have for representing the relationship, but we mostly use this because it conveys the richest set of information and is most easily understood by any non-technical audience. The two parallel lines on the department side means one and only, and the crow's feet with a 0 on the employee side means 0 or many. So it is very basic and very simple to understand and use this notation. Let us look at some more examples. Let us look at the examples from bottom to top. The first one is having two entities, professor and course. The crow's feet notation is very similar to the example of employee and department that we just saw. So now you can tell that here the relationship is that a professor can teach 0 or many courses, and a course can have one and only one professor. The second example we see has two parallel lines on both the sides, which is for showing one and only one type of relationship on both the sides. So by looking at the relationship, we can say that a student can have one and only one seat, and a seat can accommodate one and only one student. The third example that we have has a relationship which says a student can have many courses and a course can have many students. Now what we can do here is that we can further restrict this relationship by doing this. So now this says that a student can have one or many courses, and a course can have 0 or many students. Next we have is something called referential integrity. This means that if two entities are related, then an entity instance cannot exist in one entity if it does not exist in the other. For example, if employee and department are related, then an employee cannot be associated to a department if the department does not exist in the department entity. So referential integrity makes sure that the entities have valid instances or values. Now, every organization have entities that needs to be related to itself. For example, employee and manager are two entities, and an employee can be a manager, but every manager is also an employee. So instead of showing them as two separate entities in a data model, the relationship can be shown as what we show in this picture. Now this shows that an employee has one and only one manager, and a manager can have one or many employees. Let us talk about supertyping and subtyping type of relationships. These are techniques that data modelers use to better understand how data is structured and to understand the metadata. It helps in understanding how deep the relationship is between entities and what are the different levels in the relationship. At times, few entities in a data model may share some common properties within themselves, apart from having one or more distinct attributes. Based on the attributes, these entities are categorized as supertype or subtype entities. So supertype is an entity that has relationship with one or more subtypes, and it contains attributes that are common to its subtypes. And subtypes are subgroups of supertype and have unique attributes that will be different from each subtype. Each subtype will inherit the values of all the attributes of supertype. For example, if we consider a scenario of a college, there would be students and there would also be employees. They both will have some common attributes like first name, last name, addresses, etc. But they will also have their own unique attributes. Like the employee will have employee date of birth, salary, etc. And the student will have a student admission date, a course major, etc. So in this case, we can have a supertype entity as person, which will have all common attributes of first name, last name, addresses, and will also have two subtypes of employee and student. Both employee and student will have their own unique attributes. But let's take a moment to understand why we do this. When you're trying to understand the business or a business process, this helps in providing another level of detail, which helps in better understanding, and then it helps to understand the hierarchy of things in the organization.